present the study with the title Acute Supplementation with High Doses of Caffeine Improves Strength and Metabolic Stress After a Maximal Strength Test. Since the beginning of times, people try to boost their performance through some different strategies, and it's where the supplements come in. So for a very long time, people try to boost their performance through supplements, such as caffeine, creatine, and there's a lot of strategies that they could use to boost the performance. Talking about the caffeine, mainly the studies conducted with caffeine trying to analyze the aerobic performance. However, there are some lack of information regarding to the supplementation of caffeine on strength performance, and also the metabolic effect that supplementation would cause. So the purpose of the present study was analyze different effect of analyze the effect of different doses of caffeine on the strength and metabolic stress on recreational trained men. In the first moment, we had 21 recreational trained men recruited to the present study. However, after the inclusion and exclusion criteria, we end up with a sample size of 17 young athletes, young recreational trained men. Our study followed a double-blind randomized model where the sample had to ingest placebo, 6 milligrams multiplied by the body weight, which was the lower dose of caffeine, and 8 milligrams multiplied by the body weight, which was the higher dose of caffeine. The supplementation was separated by a washout of 7 days, because it's enough to provide the recovery of those different supplementations. After the protocol of the present study followed, as soon as the sample arrived at the lab, we start to measure some blood samples where we analyze the LDH, the CPK, and the uric acid. After that, approximately 30 minutes after that, we gave them the supplementation with caffeine. And after that, we start with the strength tests. The first one was the bench press test. After that, we had the deadlift, and then finally the squat. We use a 10 RM test to predict the value of the one maximal repetition on each of those exercises. So here in the results, we had a significant difference in the strength during the CF2, which was the higher dose of caffeine, in the bench press, at deadlift, and at the squat, where the lower dose was not able to provide a significant difference between the placebo and the caffeine supplementation. But although we had some nice results with the higher dose of caffeine, we had to analyze another perspective, which was the metabolic stress regarding to that supplementation. As we could expect, the performance was better with higher doses. However, the metabolic stress related to that better performance would cause some changes. So it can be visualized here when we see the CPK, where the CF2 had a significant difference between the placebo 60 minutes after the end of the test. After the end of each of those exercises, we analyze the rate of perception effort. And at the end of the study, of the tests, we collect the rate of perception effort from the session. And it's really interesting because it's related to some mechanisms regarding to the caffeine, where the supplementation might provide a reduction in the rate of perception effort. And then, however, the metabolic stress regarding to CPK was higher, the perception of effort was the same than on placebo and CF1 and CF2. The LDH was also higher after the exercise 3, which was the squat during the high dose of supplementation, compared to the placebo and the CF1, which was the lower dose of caffeine. And also we can notice a high difference in uric acid during the supplementation with higher doses and lower doses of caffeine. So probably the caffeine might provide some benefits regarding to strength development. However, we had to analyze what kind of metabolic stress that may cause. So the main conclusion of the present study is the higher dose of caffeine, such as 8 milligrams multiplied by the body weight, seems to be more effective than 6 milligrams multiplied by the body weight to improve strength. However, the metabolic stress was also higher during that supplementation with higher doses. So the take-home message is, although the supplementation with caffeine might provide some benefits regarding to strength, we have to look on the metabolic stress to have like a full benefit of that supplementation. So probably we need to change some habits, such as the recovery habits or even the feeding habits, to try to combat that higher metabolic stress related to caffeine supplementation. And just one more point here in the different doses. Although we didn't notice a significant difference between the lower dose of caffeine and the placebo group, was we need to take into account when we are talking like high-level athletes, that a small change in the improvement of strength might be a real change in a podium position. So if you increase like 2 or 3 kilograms during bench press, deadlift, or squat, it might put you in the podium or remove you from there. So even though we didn't notice a significant difference, we can see like a moderate effect size on the CF1 compared to placebo. So it might be used as a strategy to improve strength. However, the higher dose was better to promote that improvements. Thank you for your attention.
All right, the room is now open for questions. Yes.
Thank you very much for your presentation. What was the average body weight of your participants?
The participants were something around 75 kilograms with a standard deviation of 2.3, if I'm not wrong. But it was not like a high body weight.
Yeah. So what was the rationale between for using a 6 milligram and an 8 milligram dose? They seem fairly close together, and I wouldn't describe either of them as a low dose of caffeine. So why choose those two doses?
The biggest part of the studies that were conducted with caffeine used like 6 milligrams of caffeine to try to promote some benefits of that supplementations. However, some studies conducted with rats show that a higher dose of caffeine might promote a better calcium release. So we try to use different doses because the data regarding to that dose of 6 milligrams was kind of inconclusive, because some studies showed that 6 milligrams had effect and another ones didn't show that same difference. So we choose to increase that dose to see if there's some another mechanisms that could be affected for a higher dose compared to that standard dose of 6 milligrams of caffeine.
Yeah. So most of the guidelines that have been published on healthy caffeine doses will probably suggest that you have 400 milligrams per day or less. So how do you reconcile that to an athlete that you're now recommending to have 8 milligrams per kilo body weight, which is probably going to put them over that in terms of sleep and functionality for the rest of the day, even though they've been able to push harder in the gym? Did you have many reports from your individual participants of them having problems post-supplementation with high caffeine doses? Or
Like the whole tests were conducted at the morning, so we didn't suffer with a sleep change. At least it was not reported for us. But when
Any
we
cardiovascular effects?
no, the blood pressure was the blood pressure and even the heart rate was like the same between the doses. So it was kind of interesting because we were expecting some changes on that, but we didn't notice anything regarding to that. And we were talking about athletes, like they don't really care if they are getting like a bad night of sleep if they are improving their performance. So I think that would be good for them, at least during the competitions. Maybe for a long-term use, that might be harmful for the body because of the sleep effect. But well, we didn't notice anything at this study. Thank you.
Hi.
Hey there.
How do you differentiate performance and strength about the use of the caffeine for the training, and the effects of the caffeine should be considered strength or performance about your research?
Well, if they increase the strength, the performance would be better because they are doing like the repetition with a higher weight compared to the placebo, which they didn't ingest anything. So it is also a boost in the strength and the performance.
Yeah, but strength should be like a theory to building about muscle mass or the effect of the caffeine.
Oh, no, we are not analyzing the effect of caffeine on the development of muscle mass. We are just aiming to understand the effect of different doses in the strength development.
Great, thank you.
Hi, thanks for the presentation. I was wondering, were your participants habitual caffeine users?
In the very first moment of the study, we analyzed the actual consumption of caffeine, and it was something around 200 milligrams per day. So we tried to standardize that to avoid like a higher consumption of caffeine in our present study, or lowers, which could cause like some different results. So we try to standardize that, to avoid the non-consumer of caffeine and the actual consumers of caffeine.
Thanks. And then to follow up, how do you give the caffeine? Was it pills or was it a
Yeah,
drink?
it was, it's the anhydrous version, which came in a capsule, which was ingested 30 minutes before we start the tests.
Did you use the same amount of capsules?
Yes.
Yeah, okay.
Otherwise, they would like identify the substance.
Sorry, Lewis, so your placebo was just capsules of maltodextrin or empty capsules?
No, it was not empty. It was like a substance that don't present anything. But we had to put something in the capsule, otherwise it would be like with a different weight, and they would notice that difference.
And did you have any kind of subjective questionnaires after each trial to try and tease out whether the subjects knew that they were on?
Yes.
I mean, 600 milligrams of caffeine is a lot of caffeine, isn't it, as Ben was saying, so I'd have thought the side effects would have been fairly pronounced.
Yeah. If I remember correctly, it's not here, but approximately 50% of the sample detect the higher dose, but in the placebo, some of the people that are ingesting placebo said that they are ingesting caffeine too during the questions. So it was like a half-half. So.
Okay, thank you.
All right, well, thank you.
Thank you.
Mission accomplished. Oh, mission accomplished.
So this is effective acute fever supplementation on high-intensity functional training performance. So we define high-intensity functional training as multi-joint functional movements at high intensities that have typically no or little to no rest at all, and the rest